Okay, so um, are you ready to dive into Heidegger's being and time? It's not exactly a walk in the park, right?
It's dense.
Yeah, even seasoned philosophy fans might hit this and think, maybe I should just done that Sudoku today.
I wouldn't say no to a Sudoku right about now.
Right. But we're here to help you navigate this. We're going to pull out the core ideas from being and time and hopefully illuminate why they still matter. Even if you're like, ontology, what is that?
I think our listeners are up for this challenge, and Heidegger believed that facing tough questions, that's essential to authentic living.
Oh, I like that. So we're leaning in, exploring the nuances of being and time, and hopefully having some aha moments along the way. And don't worry, we've got your back and your stack of source material right here.
Yes, let's unlock this philosophical puzzle.
Okay, so where do we even start with Heidegger in this?
Well, the best place to start is with his central question. It's not just about, what exists. It's about what it means to exist. It's like, yeah, we know a tree exists, but what is its being? What is the essence of treeness that makes it different from, say, a rock or a coffee cup?
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. So he's not just putting labels on things. He's trying to understand existence itself.
Exactly. He makes this distinction between being, with a capital B, the big existential stuff, and being, lowercase b, for the individual things, the beings that we find in the world.
So being is like this cosmic question mark. And being is all the stuff we bump into every day.
You could put it that way. For Heidegger, understanding this difference, it's huge. It shapes how we see ourselves in relation to everything around us.
And that's where Dasein comes in, right?
Right. Dasein, we usually translate it as being there. It's Heidegger's word for how we humans exist in the world. Because, see, unlike that coffee cup on your desk, which just is, and it interprets, it questions, it engages with its surroundings.
So it's not just that we're physically present. It's our awareness, our consciousness of being in the world.
Yeah. And our existence, it's always unfolding, always becoming. Dasein is being in the world, deeply connected to its environment. We're constantly being shaped by our interactions.
So we're not just watching from the sidelines, we are active participants.
Yes. And the world, in turn, influences us. This being in the world, it's huge for Dasein. It's what makes us different. We can't be defined by fixed categories, those static labels we might use for a tree or a rock.
Because our being is always changing, always in motion. So if we're always becoming, always in this state of change, is there even any point in trying to define ourselves?
Yeah.
To figure out who we are?
Wow, that's a great question. And that gets right to Heidegger's idea of authenticity. You see, while our being is always kind of in process, it's not totally random. Heidegger believed we've got this inner drive to really live authentically, to find meaning.
Okay, but how do we do that when everything's constantly shifting the world ourselves?
And this is where Heidegger introduces being towards death. But before you start picturing like doom and gloom, let me explain. Heidegger's not saying we should obsess over death. It's more about embracing that our time is finite.
So acknowledging that we're mortal, that can actually help us live more fully.
Exactly. Recognizing our limits, it can be a powerful push to live authentically, to make choices that match our values, our true desires, not just drifting along with what society expects.
And that brings us to another big Heidegger idea, the they. Tell us about that.
The they. It's all those unspoken societal norms, those expectations and conventions that just seep into how we think, feel, and act. That pressure to conform, to fit in, to do what's expected, even when it doesn't feel right.
Like this invisible force field trying to mold us into something we're not.
In a way, yeah. And Heidegger, he argued that giving in to the they, it leads to an inauthentic life, living someone else's script,
That makes sense. But if we're always being in the world, interacting with everything and everyone, how do we escape the they? Seems impossible.
You're right. Not easy at all. But Heidegger believed that just by becoming aware of the they, by seeing how it's working in our lives, we can start to get some distance. We can question those norms, those expectations, and then make conscious choices about who we want to be, how we want to live.
So it's about noticing those times when we're choosing based on what we think we should do instead of what feels true to us.
Exactly. And look, this doesn't mean rejecting every societal norm or becoming a hermit. It's about being mindful. Do my choices line up with my values, my dreams?
That makes a lot of sense. But there's still this part of me that's like, how does this translate to everyday life? This all sounds very, well, philosophical, abstract.
You're right. It's not always easy to connect these big ideas to our actual experiences. So let's look at one of Heidegger's most interesting concepts, ready to hand.
Oh, I've been wondering about that one. It sounds like it's about tools, but I get the feeling it's more than that.
Right, you are. Ready to hand is about how we usually experience objects, not as these separate things we're just observing, but as tools, instruments that are part of what we're doing integrated into our actions.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So it's like when I'm using a pen to write, I'm not thinking pen, shape, color, ink. I'm focused on the writing and the pen's just there. An extension of my hand almost.
Exactly. The pen, right then, it's not something you're analyzing. It's a tool that's ready to hand, part of the task.
So in a way, it's about how we're in the world in this really practical, physical way.
Yes. And Heidegger thought this ready-to-hand way of being was fundamental to how we experience things, navigating the world, using objects, going about our day.
It's all starting to connect now. So how does this ready-to-hand idea relate to the bigger picture of Dasein and being in the world?
Now that's where it gets really interesting. Heidegger suggests that when we get too hung up on analyzing, categorizing the world, when we try to break it down into these separate little pieces, we actually lose sight of the ready-to-hand aspect of ourselves.
We're so busy trying to figure the world out that we forget to actually live in it.
Exactly. And Heidegger argues this can make us feel detached, like we're not fully present, not truly engaged.
So ready-to-hand is sort of about finding a balance between how we understand the world intellectually and how we actually experience it.
Exactly. And Heidegger believed that this balance, it's key to living an authentic life, a life that's immersed in the world, but also aware of those deeper questions about being.
This is all incredibly insightful. But before we get too caught up in hammers and pens and being in the world, let's remember our listener and ask, how does all this Heidegger stuff actually apply to our listener's life? We've talked about these complex ideas, but what do they really mean for someone who's just trying to, live their life?
That is the million-dollar question. And I think Heidegger might say it's not about finding a rule book, some formula for authentic living. It's more about a certain kind of awareness we cultivate.
Awareness of what?
Awareness of our own being in the world, for one. Realizing how much our environment, our relationships, all those societal forces, how much they shape us. And also awareness of our limits. That being towards death we talked about.
Not in a, depressing way,
Yeah.
but in a way that helps us choose what truly matters.
Right. And I think being aware of how often we fall into that trap of the they, living by someone else's script instead of writing our own.
Oh, I feel that. Going through the motions, doing what's expected, never really asking, wait, is this even what I want?
Yes. And we often feel most alive, most authentically ourselves when we're just present, lost in an activity we love. When we kind of lose track of time, we tap into that ready-to-hand way of being.
So whether it's art, music, good conversation, those flow states where you're totally absorbed, that's a way to connect with our true selves.
Absolutely. And I think those moments, they often happen when we're not overthinking, not forcing things, just being present, experiencing the world directly without the they clouding things or the anxiety of, everything.
It's like finding this freedom, letting go of expectations, self-consciousness.
Exactly. And Heidegger, he'd get that. Because for him, authenticity isn't some finish line you cross. It's the journey. Questioning, exploring, making meaning even when things are uncertain.
So if our listener could take away just one thing, one bit of Heidegger wisdom from all of this, what would it be?
Maybe this. Embrace the questions. Don't shy away from those big existential ones, even if the answers are elusive. Explore the mystery of being. The process of asking, exploring, being in the world, that's what will lead you to a more authentic, meaningful life.
That's beautiful. A good reminder that even when life's super busy, make space to think, to ask those bigger questions, to just be present.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for guiding us through Heidegger's thought. I think we've all learned a lot, even if we've got some existential homework to do now.
It's been a pleasure.
To everyone listening, thank you for joining us. We hope this sparked some new ideas, maybe even inspired you to explore Heidegger yourself. Until next time, may your being in the world be full of authenticity, wonder, and maybe even some of that ready-to-hand bliss.